Our next section is on cellular respiration. If you remember back from our cell unit, we talked about how the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell and it makes ATP. Well, in this section, we're going to learn how it actually makes ATP. So first, we're going to look at the mitochondria. The mitochondria has these little folds in it, and there's the inner membrane, which is all this blue stuff, and then the outer membrane. And so that creates kind of pockets within the mitochondria. So we're going to use two new vocab words. The matrix is this space inside that inner membrane, so all the blue here. And then these folds are called cristae, and that increases the surface area inside there, and that is going to become important later. All right, so here's the big picture with cell respiration. First stage is called glycolysis. If you were to break down this word, it literally means glyco means sugar and lysis means break. So it's breaking down glucose. Okay, so we're going to take that glucose and break it into two smaller chunks called pyruvate. And this is happening in the cytoplasm of your cell before it even gets to the mitochondria. And the cytosol, which is that liquid part, the watery part. Okay, and then it can move into the mitochondria and go through what's called the Krebs cycle. And basically, we're going to pluck apart that pyruvate molecule and break all those bonds. And when we break bonds, that's going to release a bunch of energy. And then we're going to create a waste product in carbon dioxide. And this is happening in the matrix of the mitochondria. And then we're going to take all of this extra product that we make in Krebs cycle and suck all the energy out of it through the electron transport chain. And that's going to happen in those folds called the cristae, or the inner membrane. Okay, so glycolysis. First of all, it's going to take a little energy to get the whole process going. So we're going to use two ATP molecules to split glucose into two molecules. Okay, those are called pyruvate. And so basically, instead of having C6H12O6, there are two molecules of C3H6O3. Okay, so we're just breaking it in half. By the end of that process, we're going to create 4 ATP molecules, 2 NADH molecules, which is a different kind of energy, and then the 2 pyruvate molecules. Now, just a little side note, this molecule right here, NADH, you saw something very similar in the photosynthesis section. That was called NADPH. Okay, so it's a different molecule. You can remember the one that has NADPH is only done in plants for photosynthesis. So when we're doing the cell respiration, there's no P in there. So just keep that straight. Okay, so the net yield, because we put in 2 at the beginning, we can't just say we created 4. We actually only made 2 ATP, and then we made 2 NADH molecules. So that's 2 different kinds of energy molecules that we made. All right, from here, if there's no oxygen present, we're going to go into anaerobic respiration, which we'll learn about later. But if there is oxygen present, we're going to go into aerobic respiration. So aero means air, oxygen. Okay, so it's moving on to aerobic respiration. And that's called the Krebs cycle, the next part of that. All right, so the Krebs cycle, we're going to take those 2 pyruvate molecules, we're going to move it into the mitochondria. And now we're going to pluck off the carbons of the pyruvate and combine those with the oxygen molecules that are free floating in your mitochondria and create carbon dioxide as a waste product. As we are creating these new molecules, or we're plucking off carbon and kind of recombining them with things, we're producing energy. Okay, so if you remember, we break bonds, that's going to make energy. So we're breaking apart pyruvate, which releases a bunch of energy. Okay, so we're going to go 2 turns of the Krebs cycle because we have 2 pyruvate molecules that we made. And that's going to get rid of all 6 carbon molecules of glucose and turn that into carbon dioxide. Through that process, we're going to create more ATP. So we got 2 ATP. 8 NADHs and another molecule, 2 FADH2. Okay, so this one is a brand new molecule too. So this is a different kind of energy molecule. And like we talked about at the beginning, the first section, this is just like different kinds of currency of energy. ATP is totally usable by your cell. And these two are not so much. It's like having a bunch of pennies in your pocket. Yeah, you can use it as energy, but you'd rather have a quarter or a dollar bill to spend at the store instead of a bunch of pennies. So we're going to convert these later into something usable. All right, so far we've created a bunch of energy just by the first 2 steps. Okay, this is the total yield is an adding of glycolysis and Krebs cycle. All right, so here is just a little diagram to show the Krebs cycle. Here is your pyruvate. So there's 3 carbons there, 1, 2, 3. So that's half of a glucose molecule. And basically what we're seeing is as you go through, we're plucking off a carbon and joining it with oxygen. And so this is a waste product. We're plucking up carbon, plucking up carbon. And as we do that, we're creating these molecules. Okay, so there's NADH, ATP, and FADH2. Okay, we're just going to keep it simple like that. If you take biology in college, you'll actually learn how this is all happening, the chemistry of it all. But what we're concerned with you knowing is that you're taking this pyruvate, plucking up carbon so that you create a bunch of energy. Okay, so like I mentioned before, ATP is easily used by your cell, but NADH and FADH2 are not so usable. So we're going to convert those into ATP so that your cell can use them. So that's where we're going to go to the electron transport chain and take those 2 molecules and convert them. Okay, so basically we're going to take off the electrons and the hydrogens from these molecules. So there's 1 hydrogen there, there's 2 hydrogens there. We're going to pluck those off, and the electrons come out when you pluck off the hydrogen. And we're basically going to bounce those electrons around those cristae, the inner membrane. Okay, we're going to push hydrogen across the membrane to form a concentration gradient. This is the same as what it was in photosynthesis. We're pushing hydrogen on one side of the membrane so that it builds up so that the hydrogen can move through the ATP pump, which then creates ATP, which is our good energy. We want that. Okay, so we're basically just using the hydrogens to move the pump. And then by the time the electrons are done bouncing around and the hydrogens are done moving through the pump, they join up with oxygen and form water, which is a waste product. By the end of that, we get 34 ATP. That is a ton of energy. Okay. So here it kind of shows we have the NADH, we're taking that hydrogen off, and the FADH2, we're taking those hydrogens off. We're pushing them on the outside here, just trying to build up our concentration of hydrogen in this yellow space. And then because they're building up, then the hydrogen is going to flow through these ATP pumps, and then we can make ATP, which is the whole point. Okay, so we want to take all of these little tiny molecules, the NADH, FADH2, and use them to create ATP. Okay, so there's our final goal. So by the end of this, we get 38 ATP because we made 34 in electron transport chain. We made 4 in the first 2 stages. So we get a lot of ATP out of that. We get carbon dioxide waste that was released during the Krebs cycle. We get water waste that was released during the electron transport chain. So pretty much everything on the right side of the equation for cell respiration is all waste. The only thing we're focused on is ATP. That's what we want to get out of it. So when you eat sugar and you're eating glucose, the goal is to turn all of that into usable sugar. And then you breathe out your waste product of carbon dioxide and water, which eventually makes its way through your bloodstream and such. Okay, so take a moment, see if you can figure out how to fill in the equation for cell respiration. If you need to, you can look back at the first section of notes, and you should have it already written out. But try to quiz yourself and see what you can remember. Cell respiration is done by every kind of organism, plants, animals, fungi, protists. They're all doing cell respiration, so it's incredibly useful for every organism in order to get energy to do work. And that is the end.